you know, voting is one of our most important civil rights, but it isn't always accessible for paralyzed veterans and others with disabilities. A recent government report found that less than half of polling locations were accessible in the 2016 election. Joining us now to discuss this is former Navy SEAL and the immediate past president of Paralyzed Veterans of America, Al Kovac. Thank you so much for joining us, Al, and thank you, of course, for your service.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Well, we definitely want to get the word out and let people know with disabilities that it's so important to plan ahead, check your individual states. But tell us about this new campaign, Access Your Vote.
Well, Paralyzed Veterans of America has been advocating for people with disabilities, not just veterans, for 75 years. And they led the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. And here we are 30 years later, and we're still talking about it. So like you said, there were less than 40% of the polling stations are accessible. You throw in the fact that there's a pandemic, then you've got these storms in the Gulf, you got the fires on the West Coast. So I guarantee you polling stations are probably being relocated. So there's a lot of challenges, you know, triple, quadruple layer cake of, challenges, and it's just made worse by being disabled. You've got 60 million people with disabilities in the United States, and you've got 60 million people that are potentially being denied the right to vote.
Wow, those are some incredible statistics. Thank you for showing those with us. I had no idea it was really so rampant that we must understand that states do vary as well, don't they? So it's important to plan ahead and find out how your state is dealing with the situations.
Correct. Actually, I would encourage your viewers to go to pva.org/vote. And there you can see a state-specific information about voting guidelines. There's also early voting resources. Believe it or not, some states have already opened up for early voting. And then there's a checklist. It's about 6 or 7 items you might want to consider while you plan your vote. And, planning is so important. I just have a child that's 1.5 years old that recently tested positive for COVID, and we were all quarantined for about a week and a half, and so were my parents, and so were my siblings. So, had this happened a week before the election day, we would have been forced to deal with or to consider, do we stay at home and not vote, or do we go to a polling station and risk infecting other people? Thankfully, everything worked out for us, but it just shows how important it is to plan ahead. I chose, since I live in Southern California, I chose to vote by mail ever since I was denied the right to vote about 20 years ago, basically because I couldn't get into the polling station because it wasn't wheelchair accessible. So, voting by mail works for me, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody else. And so, like you said, you've got 60 million people, you've got a broad spectrum of disabilities and abilities. So in some cases, maybe if somebody can't use their arms or hands or they can't see, then they would have a family member or someone that they trust go to the polling station and help them vote.
Well, that is such important information. We thank you so much for sharing it with us, and I'm glad your child is fine and you're fine. And certainly during this pandemic, as you said, it's going to add a little more difficulty to the process of attending a polling place. But planning ahead and accessing your vote is so important. And if you'll give your website again, once again, because I know even though you said it's Paralyzed Veterans of America, you do offer, help and outreach to all folks with disabilities.
We do. And again, if you would go to pva.org/vote, and there you'll have all the tools necessary to plan your vote.
That is great. Well, Al, thank you so much again. Thank you for your service. Glad you're all healthy. And we'll see you November 3rd at the polling places.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much.